Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Gather round, sit your ass down, baby. This is another car ride podcast because, my life doesn't stop. So here we are on the road. This episode, I talk about self-judgment. I discuss some ideas from Gary Vaynerchuk. He had a Instagram video that really resonated with me about harsh self-judgment and today's culture. And I think it's relevant. I think it's extremely relevant. It's relevant to my life. It's probably relevant to your life. So take a listen. You should go to my website, tstuch.com, tstuch.com. You can email me, tayradio1@gmail.com, tayradio1@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter, tstuch1. Go to my YouTube, like and subscribe, Taylor space Stuch, Taylor space Stuch, Stuch. Thank you guys for listening and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome back. We are live. Fuck it, we'll do it live. How's everyone doing? Let's talk about self-judgment, self-criticism. So, obviously, I think everybody is familiar with self-criticism and self-judgment. And what is that really? I guess I would define it in the terms I'm talking about. It would be really just looking at the actions you take and judging those actions, and usually judging those actions harshly. That's what I want to focus on in this podcast, is really harsh self-judgment. I think that's extremely, it's so funny. I don't know how it is among the new generation, the Gen Z. But in fact, I think Gen Z is what's largely responsible for... no, never mind. Take that back. I was going to say I think they're responsible for the outrage culture. I don't think they are, but I think they are a big part of it. Same with millennials, really. A lot of people are. Anyway, let's go back to self-judgment. So, me personally, I've dealt with it a lot. I'm not a perfectionist by any means, but I have, in certain regards I am a perfectionist, but for the most part, no. However, I am ambitious. I like to do things. When I start learning something that I really enjoy, I like to become very good at it. And so, in general, in life, there are many, many times where I question, over the last several years, my own actions, like on a more macro level. Am I in the right place in life? Am I making the right decisions? Am I with the right people? And I tend to judge myself quite harshly, as though every decision I make is going to lead to, the end of the world kind of scenario for me, right? And what I mean by that is like, if I decide I don't want to be in this business anymore, then is there a problem with that? Like, am I a loser, right? I got out of a family business over the last year and a half or so, and there have been many times where I've thought about, like, dude, did I fuck up? Did I make a mistake? Am I just a loser? Like, those thoughts, they go through your head. And at least they've gone through my head. And I think they've gone through a lot of people's heads. And I was listening to a Instagram video by Gary Vee. And it seemed kind of perfect for the time. It's so funny. I mean, if you listen to Gary Vee, everybody knows he puts out so much content that sometimes it seems coincidental that he puts out a piece of content that resonates with you, but it's almost like that's part of his media strategy anyway, is to put out so much content that something will resonate with you. And there was a lady that I guess was, I don't know, I think she was in the mortgage business, not the mortgage business, but realtor business. And she was asking him about burnout, something to that extent. And Gary Vee turned around and was like, saying, it's so funny. He was basically like, hey, fuck burnout. It's not always like, he was saying that we're all judging ourselves too harshly. And that sometimes you just get bored is kind of what it boiled down to. And I thought to myself, that is pretty damn insightful. And I think that is true for the most part. I really do think that it just depends. For those of us for the people in the world that are doing shit, like going after their dreams, working hard in a career, trying to figure out their path, but are working hard to figure out that path. Anybody doing in the world, I think, is dealing with constant, over-the-top self-criticism. Not everybody, but a lot of us. In fact, there was a girl I was trying to date, and she has her own business, like a lot of basically tutoring, but it's like high level. You know, like wealthy people pay her to come in and help get their kids' grades up. And so I could tell through our conversation and just some of the, and not just like, wasn't reading her mind. She outright said that sometimes she feels like maybe she's missed opportunities that she should have taken. And also mentioned that she's looking for new opportunities. Right? So she's not satisfied with where she is. It's not as though she's like, oh, this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life. Because, we talked and she was looking at, getting involved in some other kind of side hustles that could grow to become actual businesses. And at the time, it just made me realize, well, now that I'm reflecting on it, I realize, yeah, even somebody, I think it's very common. I think it's very common for people to judge themselves harshly. That being said, it's very difficult, I think, for people to express that or to talk to somebody about it and say, hey, I feel like I'm burnt out, or I feel like I'm making a mistake, or I feel like I'm fucking up my life. It's hard for us to talk about it because so many other people put on a facade of everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. And so you think that if you're not fine, then there's a problem. And the way that Gary Vee, I loved the way that he described burnout as simply like, hey, he's like, hey, fuck this burnout terminology. Like, maybe, and he brought this up and I really liked it. He said, maybe you just enjoyed selling houses for 18 months. And now you're bored. And I thought, wow, that is so real. That is so real. I mean, how many things in your life are like that? How many things have been like that? Now, I think many people have a couple things that they can kind of see a through line in their life, right? For me, a big thing has been martial arts. I think over the more recent years has been Chinese. And physical fitness, like, working out. There are some elements of my lifestyle that I've been engaged with for a long time that I just love, that I really never get tired of. And even with martial arts, it's like, yeah, I'm bored of what I'm doing at the moment. Like, I don't really care about competing at a high level. It's so funny. Once again, this ties into what Gary Vee was talking about. We talked about fuck burnout and like maybe you're just bored. For me, I jumped back into the martial arts scene, the Taekwondo scene, very, very heavily a few years ago after taking several years off, going to college and then getting injured, ACL surgery. And after coming back, I was very underwhelmed with my own enthusiasm. I realized that I was not enthusiastic about competing at the World Championships anymore. Whenever I had tournaments that I obligated myself to, I trained extremely hard. extremely hard, sometimes too hard, in fact, within each session. Like, that's another story, but I would get injured. And what I think is what Gary Vee was talking about is 100% applicable to that situation, to what's going on now, where I have my coach, my father, my dad, wants, for him, he's like, he knows I'm very good, and he's thinking like, dude, this is your opportunity to shine, to make it happen. Whereas for me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, dude, I'm bored as shit. Like, I'm honestly tired of this. I'm tired of this. Like, I'm tired not of Taekwondo. What I'm tired of is the the tournament training cycle. Like, I'm tired of it because it's extremely restrictive to my lifestyle. It's extremely restrictive to other things in my life that I want to do. And I think with other people, you can apply that to your career as well, right? You can apply that to the things you're doing all the time, right? Is there a career that you're doing that, hey, it takes up a lot of time? You're not able to do other things. And at first you're excited. You love it. And then after 2 years or so of working hard, then you say, man, I just don't give a shit anymore. All right, let's hold for some sponsors. I'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Do you want to record your own podcast like me? Well, Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. That's right, mofos. It's easy. Check it out. And the other part about this is that this makes me wonder about humans in general. So, after reading a lot about Nassim Taleb, learning about complexity more, learning about just kind of, as I continue to grow and learn about people, about us, about humans, I feel like I'm beginning to learn or understand that we're all very different in many different ways, but that also a lot of us are not meant to, and this may go for the majority, generally speaking, we're probably not meant to just do the same thing over and over again for the rest of our lives. I mean, assuming you subscribe to evolution, which I do. I think evolution is pretty solid. If you subscribe to evolution, then there's this idea that us humans evolved for particular environments. We evolved to work together in, small groups. We evolved to hunt, small scale farming. We evolved to survive in a very unpredictable, uncertain environment. However, we live in a very modern day Western man lives in a seemingly very predictable environment where instead of preparing yourself and dealing with the uncertainty of death from animals and weather and not getting enough food for the day, we are those are largely taken care of, right? I mean, I can live in a climate controlled house or apartment. I can drive around. I don't have to run across the Serengeti. I don't have to hunt for my food. I can go to the store. The dangers in my life are, very, very little in terms of what we dealt with in the past. And so that kind of stuff makes me wonder, like, is getting bored with particular things just completely normal? Like, especially in our modern day world. Like in our modern day world, so many of us have to go through and make money in such unnatural fashion, right? Like, the way I see it is, think about it. If you are sitting in front of a computer all day and you're working on spreadsheets and numbers, that is probably one of the most unnatural human activities you could ever engage in, right? Like, think about it. You're in a climate-controlled office, sitting in a highly manufactured chair, looking at a highly technological computer screen, going through abstract numbers that don't actually exist in real life. And like, you're doing all of these, you know, office worker type of things. And the whole environment is so artificial. It's so fake that it's like, it only makes sense to a degree that we would not be happy with that. That many, and that's not for everybody, right? Some people are just going to enjoy that. Some people are like, hey, this is exactly what I want. I want to know exactly what I need to do every single day. But I think a lot of people, and me, you know, I'm talking a lot about myself here, but I do think many other people can sympathize with the idea of, like, dude, that shit's boring, and I don't like being told what to do like that all the fucking time, you know? That's just how it is. Like, problem solving is great, but it's like living in this environment, this totally fake bullshit environment, is very difficult, I think, to deal with at times. Now, I guess with that in mind, circling back to Gary Vee, right, about burnout and everything. To me, once again, it makes sense that if you're not, for one, I would say, especially if you're not doing things that you just really enjoy doing, then I would say that the boredom aspect, the burnout, is probably going to be much more prevalent, right? Even doing things that you enjoy, you're going to get bored doing them. And I think that it's totally acceptable for people to want to take breaks from shit. You know, I am currently in a funny situation where I'm about to go abroad for what I plan on a minimum of 6 months, but I really am aiming for a year, for Taiwan. And part of that, it's so funny because part of that for me is to kind of break from what I've been doing, to readjust perspective, refocus. But in order to do that, I think you've got to be able to break from some of the patterns that you're currently in. And that's what I'm trying to do, is break from current patterns that I'm bored with, that I'm very bored with, and make a change and see what can come of that, you know? And then, see, I mean, that's just how it goes. I also think that I have been judging myself very harshly about what I'm doing, right? Like, why don't I pursue a career? Am I a loser because I'm not working at a big company, crunching numbers, or, you know, doing sales? I've had those harsh self-judgments often. And many different aspects of my life, in my work life, my different aspects of my personal life, everything. So, what Gary Vee's main message was that we need to stop judging ourselves so fucking harshly. And I agree. What I also agree with is this idea that, you know, there's really no one right way to do this life. There really is not. And there's no one way, there's no right way to do it. And even when doing specific activities, most of the time there's no one right way to do them. And, but we are killing ourselves because we think that we're not making the right decision. When really, maybe what we ought to just focus on is not making the wrong decisions. And maybe that would help us all out a little bit. And that's something that I've learned more from reading Nassim Taleb. And that's also one reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, and kind of doing some things in my life, like kind of traveling. And because for me, I'm thinking, okay, is it a bad decision to go to Taiwan, right? Is it a bad decision? No. All right, is it a bad decision that I can work remotely and meet awesome people, do cool shit, improve my Mandarin, maybe meet some very interesting people, like travel around Asia? I'm like, is that a bad decision? No, it's not. But I keep beating myself up over it because I don't know if it's the right decision. But really, who knows if it's the right decision? But as long as I'm not fucking up